Hello?
Good evening, Doctor. This is Michael Vera with Late Night in the Midlands. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing just fine, and I am looking so forward to talking with you tonight. We are live, by the way. Diane, how do I pronounce your last name so that I could get it right?
Corcoran, like the jump boots or museum?
Okay, well, that's easy enough. Okay, Corcoran. All right, I've got that. Well, welcome to Late Night in the Midlands. As I said, I'm looking forward to talking with you tonight. I've watched some videos. I've been on the websites, and you have done some fantastic work. And what I'd like to do is start out with a little bit of your background. And I mean, what got you interested in this near-death thing?
Hello?
Yes. Did you hear me?
Yes. What got me interested, I think?
Yes. What got you interested in the whole near-death experience?
Actually, it started in Vietnam with a very young soldier, and I was a very young nurse who asked me to listen to him because he had something he wanted to talk to me about. In the middle of the night, he was a young soldier who had got an amputated arm, and he started to tell me about this experience he had. What I've come to know, it was a very typical near-death experience. And his big thing was he was so afraid that I wouldn't believe him. But the emotions and the intensity of how serious he was very, very obvious. The only thing was it was 1969, and none of us had an idea about what it was. Raymond Moody didn't coin the phrase until 1975.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what got me started, really, in realizing that it was really necessary for nurses and healthcare providers to have enough information so they could help young people, or any patients, for that matter, who had near-death experiences.
That's fantastic, and I want to get even more into that in just a moment. But I want to start a little bit with you're specializing in healthcare technology and the smart cards. I'm wondering what type of technologies and what is a smart card?
Well, a smart card is any card like a credit card with a chip on it.
Ah.
And years ago, in the military, we were trying to find a way to carry healthcare information from the battlefield back to the hospitals. And so what we developed, I had developed a kind of a outline of a person and then worked with programmers so that I could drop and drag a statement like gunshot wound left arm. And I would drop it on the left arm, and then it would come out, and it would say gunshot wound left arm. And so we could read and write to this chip in a card, a very small chip then. Now we have, of course, volumes of space to do that. And we practiced and did it in the Navy. We went to Thailand in the jungle and used little small computers, and then we took the cards to a larger hospital and kept moving the information along till we got back to Hawaii and dumped it into the military health system. It was really, really a very neat application.
Uh-huh. So, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your military service. And I mean, did you ever see anything strange? And I guess out of body experience would be strange. But I mean, anything else? Like we hear a lot of military personnel tell us they've seen, like, I don't know, UFOs and these different things. Anything like that?
Well, I haven't really seen that. I spent most of my time inside a hospital, so.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay.
You know, most of my time was spent really with young soldiers and trying to save their lives. I wasn't outside much.
I see. Okay. Well, yeah, you're not going to get UFOs in there, I don't think. So
I
that's
don't
good.
know.
So, Doctor, you have published and presented a variety of different topics related to near-death experiences, and I thought maybe if you'd like to tell us a little bit about that, maybe give us a little insight on it and what near-death experiences actually are. What's happening when this happens?
Well, this is a universal experience. People all over the world, all religions or lack of religions, have them. And it's the experience that they have during some kind of crisis. Although they're called near-death experiences, at the time Raymond didn't realize that some of them would be from people who are sick or near drownings or other kinds of things that weren't necessarily near death. But it's a phenomena that happens, and they go on to have about 15 different characteristics, or they can have up to that. Some people have 2 or 5 or all 15. And then it's an experience literally where they feel like they're coming out of their physical body. They're following sometimes a light, going to the other side, they'll tell us. They went to heaven. They saw deceased relatives. For me, that was a real... I didn't always really understand or believe everything initially because I really hadn't ever heard about it. But when you hear stories after stories, and children especially, who say, I died, I went to heaven, I saw my grandfather, and, he told me this, that, and another thing, and you come to find out it's all true. And then you realize that these people, this is not a trivial experience that they just have and forget like a dream. They go on to have after effects. It's a lifelong changing phenomena that takes years sometimes to integrate and comes along with special gifts sometimes, which is also difficult. They may become healers. They might have some psychic ability. So there's a lot of different things that happen to someone who has a near-death experience.
Yeah, see, now I've had the out-of-body experience, but I've never had the near-death that I know of. So what's the difference between the two? Because it would seem that but in both scenarios, that energy or that spirit is leaving the body, right?
Yes. An out-of-body experience is like a symptom of an NDE. It's one of the characteristics that we look for. But people also can have out-of-body experiences spontaneously or actually even learn to have them through meditation and different technologies. So, but it is one of the elements of a near-death experience.
Oh, I see. So, you have dealt with obviously terminal patients, and you also want to hear a little bit about that because I was reading where you assist, and I couldn't imagine what you could do to make somebody comfortable when they're facing what they're facing. But also, you take pride in the importance of the healthcare professionals and understanding these near-death experiences. How successful have you been with that?
Well, I think it's every time we help somebody understand their experience and understand or help them transition, understanding the NDE does give you a different perspective on dying. So many people are afraid they're going into a black hole, and when you die, and that's it. But if we use the stories from the NDE and the people that come back and tell us about the experience they have, we know that there is some life, kind of life after death, and therefore it doesn't need to be scary and it doesn't need to be awful, and we can help people transition in a much more kind and loving way. And I think we see that, of course, in hospice. We see that, and we hope that nurses and social workers and clergy around the world are helping patients do that. I think it's a difficult thing for physicians, and we haven't really prepared them very well to help people who are dying, and I think it's a critical aspect of training that we need to do, and something that we hope at IANDS that we can do. We lend a lot of education. In fact, on 3 to 6 September, we'll be in San Antonio for the IANDS annual conference, and there will be many nurses and doctors there and patients who have had NDEs to share this information, and we hope we'll be able to start training people. And when I was on active duty, I gave all kinds of lectures to doctors, nurses, psychologists to help them understand what they need to do. These people do not need therapy. They don't need to be told what happened to them. They just need to be supported, and you need to be informed and provide some resources for them, and they just need to be able to own their own experiences.
Yeah, you're right. Now, how long did it take for your colleagues to actually catch on with this and not actually, I'm sure in the beginning, a long time ago, there had to have been, even a decade ago, maybe they didn't take it so serious, maybe,
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, I think I was way ahead of my time. So the mid-'70s, I started teaching about the near-death experience and why it was important to nurses and those kind of people. And remember, I was on active duty military, so I am very sure, and I was young still, that some of my superior officers thought I was crazy. They used to call me the death and dying lady. But I did a lot of lecturing, and I worked on a lot of people and changed my practice. And interesting enough, over the years, I got a lot of people who would call me and want to tell me about their experience, general officers who have had the experience and said, I can't tell you who I am, I'm concerned about my security clearance, but let me tell you about my experience. So over the years, it became easier and easier, and of course, the more rank I got, the more people I had listen to me. And it certainly, when I started, there was not one book except Raymond's, and now we have thousands of books written by experiencers. We have all kinds of people on television shows, radio shows. So it's coming around, and people are realizing, and you're starting to see the study of consciousness and understanding that because of some of the kinds of experience we see, that this is not something that's happening in the brain. It's not an act of the brain dying. When we see people who were clinically dead and then went on to have this experience, we know that this happens outside of the brain sometimes. So it's really an interesting phenomenon that's getting a lot of attention now, and people studying it.
Right, and and I've had, I'll say, so-called scientists on my show who have bent over backwards to be sure that I understood that these things were just a chemical in the brain taking effect, at death. It's like a protection mechanism that the body is designed to do, and I don't believe that.
No, I think a lot of that is just fear, and it's not a training most scientists or physicians get, and so they will find something, some little aspect of an NDE and say, well, I could trigger this part of the brain and make you have an out-of-body experience. Well, there's 14 other characteristics that it doesn't make you have, and it's a complicated experience with lots of different components to it, and nobody's got an explanation for all the different components. And I think very many people now, we have neurosurgeons like Dr. Evan Alexander who didn't believe in these at all until he went into a coma and basically had a dying brain and ultimately had a near-death experience. So it is something that's different. It's something that some people can never try to extend themselves so that it doesn't have to have a scientific explanation. We may someday have that, but certainly after you talk to thousands of people who have had NDEs, and they're all, many of them consistent, and many of them from people who would have no way to even make something up, it does get your attention.
Yeah, it certainly does. It does. Now, if you wouldn't mind, tell me a little bit about the assistance that you give with terminal patients. And what I mean is not like detailed, but have any of them ever spoke about, leaving their body and like somebody coming? Because I'm asking this because when my mother was on her deathbed, a couple days before she actually passed, she seen angels, and she was totally sane. I mean, her mind was not gone. She was talking to us about serious stuff, stopped for a moment, looked up and said, "The angels are here. Do you guys see the angels?" And then we said, "No, we don't see them." And, she went right back on to talking about what she was talking about. So I'm wondering, is there accounts of us leaving the body before the suffering?
Oh yeah. With people who are terminally ill, you sometimes see them leave and come back, and they'll tell you stories and come back. And when my mother was sitting with her sister who had lung cancer, and she'd been comatose for a couple of days, she sat up in bed and said, "Jane, do you see Mom and Dad? They're here to take me." And of course my mother couldn't see them, but she was smart enough to say, "No, but I understand. You can go with them." And we hear this all the time from people, that they're looking at somebody, that they're calling somebody's name, and that people are coming to get them, or they see the angels, and it's a very common phenomenon.
So now, Doctor, you also counsel people who have NDEs. I'm wondering, can you share some experiences with us? Because I've heard some great ones, especially with children who have described things that they shouldn't know.
Right. Yeah, that's for me the most important one. And how you deal with that is, I remember a situation when I was in the Army, and a woman came in she had a allergic reaction and was on a ventilator and not capable of talking. And she had a little boy about 7, and she was not going to recover. And so I wanted to make sure that, her child, what he was thinking, and I spent a lot of time with him, letting him draw pictures, telling him his mom was going to go to heaven, and what did he want to say to her. And so every case is different, but I have spent time with people telling them about a near-death experience so that they would feel less afraid or more comfortable, and I've read some things to them, or they wanted to hear an actual experience. So many of them are, somebody's electrocuted, they're in surgery, they had a near drowning, they feel like their body lifts, their physical body, they can see their physical body, and they're looking down at it. And of course that's very confusing because they're trying to figure out if they're dead or alive. And then they will talk about zooming out of their body, out of the hospital, out of the building, and then go up and look at the earth, or go to what they might call heaven, see deceased loved ones who are there to talk to them and welcome them. And then if they come back, they can share that information. So it's really an amazing, extraordinary experience that changes your life forever.
Yeah, well, I know the out-of-body experience did that for me. I had, almost a year ago now, I had a heart attack, but I never went unconscious, and I never, had the feeling of leaving my body or any of that during that. So, but I understand that people can have near-death experiences without actually, being near their death. Is that true?
Yes, that's true. I mean, they could be very, very sick, or they could have had a heart attack, and they could have be in the middle of an operation, or electrocuted, or almost drowned. There's lots of circumstances now that we know people have these experiences in, and they don't need to actually be clinically dead. They may have their blood pressure fall out, and especially when you're talking about the elderly. And I'm, of course, very concerned about our veterans, because they're being maimed and have horrible physical injuries and some emotional injuries, and then many of them are having near-death experiences and want to talk about that with somebody, and there is nobody to talk to that understands that. For the most part, they're put in a group or put on a bunch of medication, and really, really a shame for them not to be able to understand their experience. I think that they could probably facilitate their own healing if somebody was there to support them and give them information, and that's what I'm trying to do. We're inviting a lot of veterans, any veterans, disabled veterans who have had NDEs. If they want to come to the conference in September, I will be giving them some scholarships so that they can get heard and people can see them and talk to them about their experience. Many of them just had it years and years ago, or as children, and because nobody listened at the time, they are very hesitant to talk about it.
Yeah, and that's great that you're doing that too. I mean, that really is a wonderful thing, because there is nobody to talk to, and even doing a radio show, there's a lot of people who don't want to get on the radio and talk about it either, because they're afraid. There's too many people listening. They're gonna know who I am and think I'm crazy, and and
yeah, we have, and that's exactly right. We actually have started an email called Vet Help at IANDS .com, and it's so that people can write in and talk about it, and do it for however they are comfortable with it. In the last radio show I did, we had several people that came in and wrote eventually, and then sent more things, and eventually came out and really started talking about their experience. And it was sad, because so many of them were just really frightened of that. And, I hate for that to happen, that people have to be worried about that and not have the ability to have somebody there to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now with the veterans having near-death experiences, now I've always heard that these experiences are wonderful experiences, and if that's the case, and it's such a great place, why you think somebody who might be suffering inside or however, that they might think, hey, why am I even living this life? Why not just skip this and get over to where it's incredible?
Well, what they learn, and we've seen this in the research for attempted suicides, is that people who attempt suicide and have near-death experiences are really not likely to ever try that again, because they get the answers, they get the purpose of their life, they get to know that it's not their power that's going to tell who's going to come back and who's not. Many people try to stay there, and then will be angry with us when we resuscitate them. They'll say, I didn't want to come back, I tried to stay there. So it's not our choice. There's a position higher than us that makes those decisions. And so we work on that and give people information. And I just want the veterans to be able to have a place where they can talk about it and feel free to talk about it, and help them any way we can in terms of allowing them to get information, because they're not likely to get it at the VA. The VA doesn't really understand this. Their physicians, for the most part, don't know what NDEs are. And their solution is giving them drugs, which is the very last thing they need.
That's very, very true. That's a big problem with things like this. A person will go see a psychiatrist or what have you, and ask, do you hear voices? Do you see people? And what if you really are? And what if it's really happening? Or, I had a near-death experience. I saw Jesus, or whatever it is that they did, and right away they want to throw them on some drugs and
put them in a group. And so we're really trying to change that and trying to help them. If we need to train the VA people, we're very willing to do that, so that these young people, they really do very well with just support and information and being able to see each other. I know for anybody who's had an NDE and never found a place to really be at home with it, when they come to our conferences, they feel like they've really hit the jackpot, because everybody there understands them. Everybody there accepts them. There's no question about trying for them to try to validate their experience. They're just learning new behaviors, integration, all kinds of wonderful things. And I can't tell you the number of times people go out in tears and say, this has changed my life.
And are there after effects, like psychological changes that go through? I mean, for the good and the bad, or is it mostly good?
Well, it all depends on the way that you look at them. Sometimes there are a lot of after effects, and for example, one of the things that people do is they become more generous. They're not as interested in money. So if you're married and very rich and have 3 houses and 2 cars and your family's, all about the vacation, the summer home, and all of a sudden you have an NDE, and now you're really not interested in those things. You're interested in writing poetry, supporting people who have these experiences, but you have a wife who's still on the 3-car track. It becomes a problem, even though it's a wonderful after effect in some ways. So you have to moderate all of them. And there are people who have more frightening experiences, and usually these are integrated. It's a very low % that we hear about, and they're typically integrated in a more positive way over time. But all of these things take time to understand, and if you can't talk about it and you can't share it with people, we have groups all over the country and in Europe. So we have 44 groups, and a lot of people can find a group near them and join them. They have meetings once a month, and they're there to support and talk. And I think I'm eventually going to do an online group where people can just talk online and try to get some support as they're telling about their experience, because there are some people who aren't any place close to a group.
Yeah, that's true. And, it is, I guess, now with the internet, it certainly could make it a little easier, but then you still have your trolls who might make people not feel comfortable about talking about their experiences. But I want everybody to talk about their experiences, because this is how we learn. And I don't know about anybody else, but I'm sure just like you, I want to know what's going on the other side, because we're all going to get there.
That's the whole point. It's hard to believe when everybody's going to die that you weren't interested in what happens on the other side. That's the thing that is amazing to me, because we're all going to be there, and I sure want to know as much about it as I can.
Oh yeah, you and me both. Definitely. Now, I wanted to go back to the children for just a moment, because when I think about a child's mind, most children, anyways, their minds haven't been conditioned yet. If they're young enough, where like I heard of a child who spoke of his service, and I think it was World War II. And he actually took people to where his plane went down. He took people. He told people about who he served with and who his friends were, and they were able to confirm it all. And I think this kid was like 3 or 4 years old. I mean,
yep, we hear a lot about that, and I think it's some of the best evidence when people can give you information, especially children. They don't watch television about NDEs. They don't read. They only know what is real to them. And so, and I think a lot of kids have been dealing with the spirit world for a long time. When people talk about imaginary friends, I think they're not imaginary friends. I think they're spirit friends that kids talk to. They're very engaged with the spirit world. And pretty much over time, adults try to get them out of that world. So it's fascinating, the things that they tell us. And unfortunately, people, they usually try to tell their parents or a teacher or somebody one time. But if you don't really listen and help them understand that, they are not going to talk about it again.
Right. Now, with near-death experiences, I wonder now, have people come back? I mean, has anybody been able to give information about the process or what happens over there? Or I mean, for my out-of-body experiences, I was still on Earth, so as far as I know. So, but with a near-death experience, apparently they go through this tunnel of light, and there's all different kinds of experiences like that, right? And I'm wondering, so what is on the other side? Anybody ever been able to explain that?
Oh, a lot of people tell us that there's a city of lights. They meet deceased relatives. I've heard people say, well, yes, I learned more on the other side. I had to really continue to learn. And so people talk about flowers and different kinds of music and different kinds of colors. So apparently there's quite an array of things to look at on the other side and experience.
So, well, I'm wondering if it's anything like now. I mean, do we have interest in doing things? Are there, I don't know, are there games? Is there entertainment, or is it, are we all sitting around playing harps?
No, I think actually I've heard somebody talk and gave me some information. They said, well, this is somebody who communicates with spirits all the time. They said, well, they're not going to be around for a while because they have to go teach a class. And I said, what? You have to work on the other side? And they said, no, it's something they love and they do. So I think it's, challenging and loving and lesson learning. And, you decided to come to this earth and participate in a contract to learn lessons, and maybe you didn't learn them all, so now you've got to backtrack and make some decisions or talk about these things. I think it would be wonderful for us to do a survey where we really talk about those things. What kinds of things did you do on the other side? And we know that there are after effects from coming back, and we do have a lot of material written. Like if people would go to our website, IANDS.org, there are a lot of people there that have written experiences, and it does give you a little bit about what it's like to be on the other side.
And, I love hearing that somebody had to teach a class on the other side, because then that means that I love radio a lot. So that means when I go to the other side, I might be able to actually start a news show and call it What It Was Like on Earth. And, I could just every night come on and talk about what it's like to be on Earth, so these spirits could be ready when they have to come here for their lessons.
Isn't that an interesting concept? Yes.
Well, yeah, I'll do it. So, why does, for most people who go through a near-death experience, and I think you covered a pretty good deal, but somebody asked, why does life seem so different afterwards? Why, how come? I mean, it seems like somebody could be the most rottenest you-know-what, but something like this could, turn them into butter.
Well, I think part of it is many people will tell us that they finally understood what their purpose in life. Because a lot of people who are lost and kind of roaming around, they don't know what their life's about. They don't know what they're supposed to be doing. So I hear that after that, they have a real sense of purpose, and so they dedicate themselves to that purpose, helping veterans. And they're not selfish anymore. They're very focused on helping and providing things for the good of other people. And so that makes people feel better and really work hard at doing some things that make a difference in their life. And I think they get a sense, some people have a life review, and it's kind of like watching 100 televisions at once. They go there and they go back and see all the things that happened in their life that might have not been too kind. And they will experience that, like maybe they bullied somebody in grade school. Well, they're going to experience being bullied from somebody and how that felt. And it really gives people a different perspective of what's supposed to happen and how they should have behaved differently. And I think it's sort of like also being vaccinated with an empathy vaccine. I know my nephew is a near-death experiencer, and I realized this when he was about 2, and he always was very, very kind and reached out to help people and really went out of his way. It's just like it became part of him. And you see this a lot with experiencers. They say it's all about love. And many, very frequently, are very affectionate and very loving, and that's what it's about, trying to provide love and continue the idea of love. And so it's an amazing phenomena. When I hear people talk about it, they say you can't possibly understand what it's like to be encompassed in the love of God, the love of heaven, however they describe it. They said there's just no competition with it, and therefore all they want to do is just kind of soak in that and give it back, so to speak. So there are a lot of things that they can do after they come to recognize that, they had a phenomenal experience that was really out of this world for them.
So, but and I would wonder why we come back. We came here for a lesson. We go to the other side, and they say that we agree to come back. So it must be that when we're on the other side, we look at this like any other job. Maybe, I don't know. I would hope we take it for more than that, but I wonder, like me, I don't know. At this point, I guess I would come back because I'm having a lot of fun.
I think a lot of it has to do with lessons too. Before we're born, we agree to come here and provide certain lessons for ourselves and others, and of course we don't always remember that. And so if something comes about and we happen to end up having a near-death experience and going to heaven maybe prematurely, or wherever that place is, it provides us an opportunity, and I don't think we're always given a choice. I know a lot of people say, I was sent back. I didn't want to come back, but I was sent back, because apparently we haven't always finished our lessons, and so they're going to come back and work around another way, and we'll be provided another opportunity to learn certain things. And so I think that's also part of it.
Well, you know, Father knows best, right?
Yeah.
You start coming up to his bedroom door, and he says, "Nope, go back. It's not your time yet." We have to take a quick break here, Diane. So hang on with us for a moment. I'm going to put you on hold, and it's going to get quiet for you. So you've got probably a good 5 minutes. So if you need to do anything, by all means, go ahead, and we'll be back in just a few moments, folks.
Nobody believed her, so she never talked about it again until recently when she told me about it. And, I mean, it was just an incredible experience. And then she went on to have a couple of near-death experiences, so she has all kinds of talents. I sure think this happens to kids, and unfortunately, they don't get listened to enough. And I want to just mention the line again so that we can help anybody that'd like to talk about their individual experience. It's vethelp@IANDS.org. Just VETHELP, vethelp@IANDS.org. And I am very sure that this happened to her, and maybe some of that will come back so she can experience more of it. Reading helps. If you get on our website, there's all kinds of experiences, and a lot of people will start reading and then remember, I had that experience. So that is very helpful to do that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of books out there now.
I was just going to say, I spent a good deal of time on your website today, and I'll be honest, it's hard to get off of it. Once you get on there and you start reading that stuff, before you know it, you might as well open up a nice thick book, because you're going to keep reading them. I mean, they're just fascinating stories. Yeah,
and there's a lot of reference material, and now there are so many books. PMH Atwater has written 7 books herself on After Effects, children, the NDE, and so there are a lot of reference books now for people to go look at, and many of them are people who have had experiences and are just talking about their experience. And others are more scientific, like Evan Alexander's Proof of Heaven. And then there are ones that just really are inspirational.
Right. Yeah, there's a wide variety of them. And, I wonder why we have these experiences, because, I mean, it's almost like a tease. It's, for me, I'm thinking, okay, big guy upstairs, whoever you are, if we're supposed to know, let us know. If we're not supposed to know, don't let us know. But these teasers, that's the question, and certainly the question we get asked the most. Why does one person have one and others don't? And some very bad people have them. People who are atheists have them, and of course they don't stay atheists very long, usually. They might have very religious, so we just don't know. I mean, it's not like bad people have them for some reason, or good people. You have all kinds of people from all over the world, all different religions, even religions that supposedly don't even believe in an afterlife. We'll talk about them, and so it's really a question for the ages, specifically, that we don't know the answer to that. Right, and even atheists, I mean, that, to me, that's a religion too, because they believe there's nothing after. They believe there's no God. So, that's, again, they're going on belief. So So I look at it all as kind of religious, and for me, I think the best lessons are the experience. I mean, I'm so thankful to have had the experiences I've had, but the one we're talking about tonight, is not one I'm anxious to have.
Well, it's one of those that, we get calls once in a while for somebody who said, well, we want to work on giving people near-death experiences. Would you all like to participate? Well, no, we don't want to work on giving people near-death experiences. We want to work in helping them understand and enjoy and integrate their near-death experience. And hopefully one of these days, the more we study, the more we understand, we'll have a better understanding of why certain people have them, and what if there are any clues there. Right now, we haven't seen anything that has to do with education or culture or anything of that sort. Everybody has them. So there's a reason, I'm sure, but not at our pay grade yet to know that.
So, why? I mean, has anybody ever told about being stuck, like in between? Because I wonder what's up with all these ghosts. I mean, there's, people. I myself have had paranormal experience where there was entities in the room with me that I couldn't see, and now I can't prove that to nobody. But then neither can most of the other people who tell us these stories. But it does happen. So, did anybody ever talk about, being stuck in there, or why people get
people that are still haven't totally transitioned, or that there are some entities stuck. I actually had an experience with this in a hospital in Germany.
Ooh.
And where a patient died, and the nurses were seeing the patient 2 or 3 months later, and the patient that was in her room kept talking about this woman who came to talk to him and said he should get out of the room. It wasn't his room, and he was Korean, so he didn't speak English. So it was all very interesting. And I actually went upstairs and opened the windows and kind of said a prayer and said, Lena, it's your turn. You got to leave now and can't be bothering these patients. And just go go up and enjoy yourself and do what you need to do. And they never had any trouble with her again. But I have heard of certainly spirits occupying different places.
So there's probably a whole lot of that goes on in hospitals, huh? Because it seems like for a majority of people, I guess that's their last spot, right?
Well, that could be in a lot of old places that might have spirits from difficult times that weren't able to transition. I often think about the concentration camps and some of the slavery places where, horrible things happened, and spirits certainly could have got stuck there.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And why? It seems like somebody's in charge, because with these near deaths, people are told you have to go back. So they go back. But then you have these other entities, these ghosts that run free, and they're allowed to scare the pants off somebody, but nobody's controlling that. So I wonder, if it's whole different realms altogether.
Well, I think that they're like anything. I think there are good spirits and devilish spirits, and I don't think the spirit world is anything to play around with. And we all need to be careful of that and surround ourselves with good energy and those kinds of things. But there are many people who feel like they have beloved spirits around them, that, a spouse that died or someone, and they're just very happy to have them around. They can't see them necessarily, but they can feel them or sometimes communicate with them, and just happy to know they're there.
And folks, again, if you have questions, you could either private message those questions to me in the chat room at latenightinthemidlands.com, or you can call in, which would probably be the preferable way. And the number is 803-317-2264. We would love to hear from you. Now, you did mention near-death experiencers come to feel more love and accept others, and it's without the usual attachments. Like how does that mean? I mean, is somebody who's addicted to, say, cigarettes on this side, when they cross over, I mean, do those things go with you?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I've never heard anybody say anything about that. There certainly are after effects. People are more generous, they're more altruistic, they seek different kinds of professions, and sometimes even have physical things where they become more sensitive to medication or detergents, they have more allergies, they have a temperature that's lower than they've ever had, and that seems to be consistent sometimes. So they have both psychological and emotional and physical after effects. Some people really get very powerful healing skills or psychic skills where they can predict the future. They have communication with spirits. So there's all kinds of gifts that you can get from the NDE, which sometimes might be frightening if you're, not used to this and kind of all of this comes on you at once. So it's something that takes a little bit getting used to.
I see. And somebody had just sent me some promos for the conference that's coming up. And sure, I'll be glad to run those. But you want to let everybody in on that again, on the conference and where it's going to be and who's attending? And, thank you.
It's going to be in San Antonio, Texas, the 3rd through the 6th of September. It's going to be a fabulous group of people and speakers. And you can see all the details and actually register. There's on our website, there's a place to go there where you can find out all the information. The hotel is at the Marriott on the river. And we're going to just have a great line of speakers. And so I think it's just a wonderful place for people to go who haven't ever been surrounded. It's great for everybody. We have the same people who come every year, and they've been coming for years and years, because we have different speakers every year. But it's really wonderful for people who are experiencers and have not had the opportunity to be around a lot of experiencers. We're hoping this year to have a lot of disabled vets who have had NDEs. I'm giving scholarships to disabled vets who have had NDEs, and we want them, and we're going to have a great discussion group so they can start to feel like they can be in a group of their own and talk about their NDEs. One of the gentlemen I'm going to be speaking with, I met him at my Vietnam reunion last year, and through he was a patient, and through his discussion, I realized that he was a near-death experiencer. I don't think he really realized it. He knew something had happened, but didn't know what it was. So I asked him to send it down and to send it to us. And it's our latest issue for membership to keep on top of this stuff. It's great to, it's very inexpensive to join IANDS, and you get a newsletter and get to know all the latest things that are happening. And he'll be with me talking about it. It was a military combat NDE, and we'll be in San Antonio in a group discussion about that.
Fantastic. All right. Well, yeah, sure. We'll definitely run it, and we like to promote stuff like that. I think it's important. That's why we're talking about it tonight. You know, the closest I've come is a near drowning, and I guess to be clinically dead, your heart has to stop, right? Stop beating?
Typically that would be part of the definition, yes.
Yeah, see, I stopped breathing, but my heart was still beating, I guess. But yeah, I had a drowning experience, which was no fun. But you'll find that when it comes to that point, like when I came to the determination that there was no coming back, that's it. You give up. There's no panic. It's just your body shuts down on you. It's there's nothing you could do about it, really. So, but my buddy saved me, thankfully. Doug, if he's listening, he's always my hero. This guy, he was born with a birth defect, has a small arm, and most people would say, "Oh, how's he do this?" I'll tell you what, he's a machine. He got through that water, got me out of there. And what a guy, twice too. He saved me twice. So I think I do have a guardian angel. I think he's in the flesh though.
Yeah.
He just happened to be there each time. So
and I think that's so interesting. When you talk about your friend like that, we had a lecture at the Vietnam reunion about Agent Orange second generation children who have major birth defects and aren't accepted or given anything from the Veterans Association, even though these kids, they know it's directly associated with Agent Orange and their parents, or their father mostly, having been exposed to it. So different people, they with whatever they're given to deal with, can make a huge difference, because everybody accepts things differently and works differently for different goals, and it's amazing to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I got somebody outside the studio window here with a loud vehicle. I don't know who it is. I don't know if everyone heard that, but do experiencers develop a sense of timelessness? And if they do, how? How does that
Well,
work?
I think there's no time or place in this other realm. So I think when they come back, I think it is difficult for them to do things like on a real routine and be really, I think they have to really train themselves to work to be able to do, 9 to 5 or whatever they're doing, because time doesn't seem as important, because it doesn't exist in the same way on the other side.
Mm-hmm. And do some or all experiences, I mean, you mentioned that they have changes after something like that, like intuitiveness. So does that mean that people who have near-death experiences, at least a good variety of them, right, have actually come out of it with psychic abilities?
There are people that do, and sometimes it doesn't come right away. It might come years later, kind of slowly. But a lot of people do have increased intuitiveness after the fact of their experience. And a lot of people, if they're not paying attention and really not doing a little reading and trying to understand it, they'll just keep ignoring it and pushing it away. And, that happens sometimes too. So hopefully we want to encourage people to read a lot about after effects. PMH Atwater has a great book on after effects, and other books that talk about that, so they become familiar with things that might be happening to them. People have electrical issues. Many people have trouble with their computer, with lights, with printers, after they've had their experience, and they have to go through some things and try to find a way to work with them, so to speak, or they can't wear a watch because their batteries keep dying. And I've heard of some people who can walk into a room and the light bulbs keep flicking on and off, or in some cases have just exploded. So there's absolutely a change in the electrical makeup. We all have electrical issues around us and feeling them, but they're very enhanced with near-death experiencers.
So, and I've heard that same type of thing with people who have, I guess, been abducted by aliens. And not to get off on that, but I do see some similarities there with people who have had contact with ET, who will claim that lights go off when they walk by them, and all these different things. So, but yeah, with ghosts too, they drain batteries. One story that has fascinated me for a very long time is a story about this man, and I've told this a few times on the air here. This man who had to get a triple bypass surgery, and he was put out. And while he had met the doctor briefly before his surgery, obviously, and but the doctor was wearing his normal get up when he met him, and well, in the surgery, this guy's out. He has no idea what's going on or what's what. His heart, I guess, is being worked on. He claimed to be above the whole time watching this happen. And nobody really wanted to believe him until he was able to, he described the doctor. He says, he asked the nurse, he stopped her one day, and he says, how come the nurse or the doctor kept doing the chicken dance over me while he was working on me? And she laughed, and she said, well, he doesn't use his hands to point, he uses his elbows to point at what he wanted. And so to this guy, it looked like the chicken dance. And so how would he have known that? And the other thing was, he says, and why was the doctor wearing these big clown shoes? Well, he had some kind of a rubber tote that he put over his foot, or his feet when he did surgery. So, I mean, there's another case. I mean, and I guess these cases are endless, aren't they?
Yes, we have lots of cases where people have seen precisely what went during surgery. We've had cases where children have really been comatose and could describe what their doctors did to them to try to resuscitate them. So there's a lot of people that can articulate very specific things in discussions that happened while they were either anesthetized or unconscious.
So then would it be fair to say that in the big picture, you and I are immortal? I mean, if we can go, when we leave this body, if I'm still me and you're still you, wouldn't we be immortal?
Well, I think according to most experiencers, we are a little different. We're still kind of the soul of the person. And people meet like in soul groups, like your relatives and pets and those kinds of things. But absolutely, this is not the end. We're going to a different place, a different time, different aspects. And the more we can learn about that over years, we've learned a lot over the last 50 years. And I'm sure we will continue to learn. I've been working in this area now for 40 years, so I have a few more years to get all the information we need to go to the other side.
Yeah, and with science, or I should say with mad scientists going in the direction they're going, I mean, it's getting to the point where they can create, a human being now. So I wonder in the future what kind of effects those things are going to have on these experiences, and I wonder if we're going to actually be able to make contact without dying. Well,
it's a very good question, and there's lots of questions coming up because of us finding out that these experiences are not really located in the brain, so they exist outside of brain activity. And that opens up a lot of studies and a lot of questions for us in the future.
It really does. It does. Tell me a little bit about your book. You have a book. Is it called When Ego Dies?
Well, it's a compilation of many different people's experience, and it's a nice little book for people to read because it does give different aspects and different kinds of experiences, much like you'll read on the website too. There are many, many experiences. I really need to write a book about, from a medical perspective, things that we should be doing to help people own their own experiences, and that is the most important thing, is that we don't discourage anybody or judge anybody. We just let them own their experience and provide them information at this time. And really I've given a lot of talks and continuing care communities, and like they'll say, I just want to know what's going to happen when I die. That's all. I just want to believe that it's just not all over. And so, people want to know different things for different reasons, but it's wonderful. The more we do that and the more we help people with that, the better it's going to be for everybody.
Absolutely. Well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you the floor to get out anything that you'd like. If there's anything we haven't covered or touched on yet you'd like to talk about, by all means, go ahead. Anything you'd like to plug, by all means, go ahead. And I want to thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Well, I'm just very, very happy to be with you. I want to give people the email again if they want to privately send something to me. That's VetHelp, VETHELP @IANDS.org. And certainly invite everybody to our conference. You can get all the information on the web page, the 3rd through the 6th of September, and make sure you come up and say hello to me if you come. We welcome everybody, and it will change your life. And I ask everybody to, if you're at all interested in this, to let me know. Maybe you can join IANDS. It's very minimally expensive, and therefore you can start to find out for yourself about things that are going on. It's full of articles and different kinds of things with research and other things. So we're all about educating people, making them aware of information, and just trying to help support people who have had near-death experiences.
Well, and it's great that there's people like yourself who take it so serious and put so much time and effort into it, because it is important. It's important to every one of us, whether we know it or not, because one day you're going to be on that doorstep, just like every one of us will be.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Absolutely.
One out of one goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Doctor, I thank you so much for joining us here tonight. It has been my pleasure, and I look forward to talking to you some more in the future. And if you've got any of your conference goers who would like to be a guest, please send me an email or have them send me an email, and I'd love to talk to any of them.
Okay, that'll be great. I will do that.
All right. Well, thank you again, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, everybody. There she goes. Very, very interesting. And, I asked all the questions I had, and I gave everyone an opportunity to ask theirs. And thank you for your question, Crystal. Other than that, I guess everybody was more fascinated with listening, which is okay with me. I don't mind. We've got plenty to do here.
Raymond Moody didn't coin the phrase until 1975.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what got me started, really, in realizing that it was really necessary for nurses and healthcare providers to have enough information so they could help young people, or any patients for that matter, who had near-death experiences.
That's fantastic, and I want to get even more into that in just a moment. But I want to start a little bit with you're specializing in healthcare technology and the smart cards. I'm wondering what type of technologies and what is a smart card?
Well, a smart card is any card like a credit card with a chip on it.
Ah.
And years ago, in the military, we were trying to find a way to carry healthcare information from the battlefield back to the hospitals. And so what we developed, I had developed a kind of a outline of a person and then worked with programmers so that I could drop and drag a statement like gunshot wound left arm. And I would drop it on the left arm, and then it would come out, and it would say gunshot wound left arm. And so we could read and write to this chip in a card, a very small chip then. Now we have, of course, volumes of space to do that. And we practiced and did it in the Navy. We went to Thailand in the jungle and used little small computers, and then we took the cards to a larger hospital and kept moving the information along till we got back to Hawaii and dumped it into the military health system. It was really, really a very neat application.
So, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your military service, and I mean.
Hello?
Good evening, Doctor. This is Michael Vera with Late Night in the Midlands. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing just fine, and I am looking so forward to talking with you tonight. We are live, by the way. Diane, how do I pronounce your last name so that I could get it right?
Corcoran, like the jump boots or museum.
Okay, well, that's easy enough. Okay, Corcoran. All right, I've got that. Well, welcome to Late Night in the Midlands. As I said, I'm looking forward to talking with you tonight. I've watched some videos. I've been on the websites, and you have done some fantastic work. And what I'd like to do is start out with a little bit of your background, and I mean, what got you interested in this near-death thing?
Hello?
Yes. Did you hear me?
Yes. What got me interested, I think?
Yes. What got you interested in the whole near-death experience?
Actually, it started in Vietnam with a very young soldier, and I was a very young nurse who asked me to listen to him because he had something he wanted to talk to me about. In the middle of the night, he was a young soldier who had got an amputated arm, and he started to tell me about this experience he had. What I've come to know, it was a very typical near-death experience. And his big thing was he was so afraid that I wouldn't believe him. But the emotions and the intensity of how serious he was very, very obvious. The only thing was it was 1969, and none of us had an idea about what it was. I really hadn't ever heard about it. But when you hear stories after stories, and children especially, who say, you know, I died, I went to heaven, I saw my grandfather, and, you know, he told me this, that, and another thing, and you come to find out it's all true. And then you realize that these people, this is not a trivial experience that they just have and forget like a dream. They go on to have after effects. It's a lifelong changing phenomena that takes years sometimes to integrate and comes along with special gifts sometimes, which is also difficult. They may become healers. They might have some psychic ability. So there's a lot of different things that happen to someone who has a near-death experience.
Yeah, see, now I've had the out-of-body experience, but I've never had the near-death that I know of. So what's the difference between the two? Because it would seem that, but in both scenarios, that energy or that spirit is leaving the body, right?
Yes. An out-of-body experience is like a symptom of an NDE. It's one of the characteristics that we look for. But people also can have out-of-body experiences spontaneously, or actually even learn to have them through meditation and different technologies. So, but it is one of the elements of a near-death experience.
Oh, I see. So, you have dealt with obviously terminal patients, and you also I want to hear a little bit about that because I was reading where you assist, and I couldn't imagine what you could do to make somebody comfortable when they're facing what they're facing. But also, you take pride in the importance of the healthcare professionals and understanding these near-death experiences. How successful have you been with that?
Well, I think it's every time we help somebody understand their experience and understand or help them transition, understanding the NDE does give you a different perspective on dying. So many people are afraid they're going into a black hole, and when you die, and that's it. But if we use the stories from the NDE and the people that come back and tell us about the experience they have, we know that there is some life, kind of life after death, and therefore it doesn't need to be scary and it doesn't need to be awful, and we can help people transition in a much more kind and loving way. And I think we see that, of course, in hospice. We see that, and we hope that nurses and social workers and clergy around the world are helping patients do that. I think it's a difficult thing for physicians, and we haven't really prepared them very well to help people who are dying, and I think it's a critical aspect of training that we need to do, and something that we hope at IANDS that we can do. We lend a lot of education. In fact, on 3 to 6 September, we'll be in San Antonio for the IANDS annual conference, and there will be many nurses and doctors there and patients who have had NDEs to share this information, and we hope we'll be able to start training people. And when I was on active duty, I gave all kinds of lectures to doctors, nurses, psychologists to help them understand what they need to do. These people do not need therapy. They don't need to be told what happened to them. They just need to be supported. And
did you ever see anything strange? And I guess out-of-body experience would be strange, but I mean, anything else? Like we hear a lot of military personnel tell us they've seen, like, I don't know, UFOs and these different things. Anything like that?
Well, I haven't really seen that. I spent most of my time inside a hospital, so.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay.
Most of my time was spent really with young soldiers and trying to save their lives. I wasn't outside much.
I see. Okay. Well, yeah, you're not going to get UFOs in there, I don't think. So that's good. So, Doctor, you have published and presented a variety of different topics related to near-death experiences, and I thought maybe if you'd like to tell us a little bit about that, maybe give us a little insight on it and what near-death experiences actually are. What's happening when this happens?
Well, this is a universal experience. People all over the world, all religions or lack of religions, have them. And it's the experience that they have during some kind of crisis. Although they're called near-death experiences, at the time Raymond didn't realize that some of them would be from people who are sick or near drownings or other kinds of things that weren't necessarily near death. But it's a phenomena that happens, and they go on to have about 15 different characteristics, or they can have up to that. Some people have 2 or 5 or all 15. And then it's an experience literally where they feel like they're coming out of their physical body. They're following sometimes a light, going to the other side, they'll tell us. They went to heaven. They saw deceased relatives. For me, that was a real... I didn't always really understand or believe everything initially because